and I get it, but I think it goes back to what you were just saying about like teaching kids responsibility, teaching kids accountability. We've lacked that as a society. I feel like, at least in the States, and I think that's where it begins to show itself. Like, if you've never had to deal with any kind of adversity or issues, when it comes up, you just don't have the tools to deal with it.
Yeah, well, the inability to take any kind of criticism. So do you let someone just keep going, uh, basically interfering with your practices and everything? You just let it happen because you're afraid to say, well, no, that's not the role and responsibility. It just, what would if you can't say, no, this is the time to do this and this is the time to do that. And I just thought, it would end right there, and the next day, would be on the bench and all hunky dory. But this girl quit the team because she'd been, corrected. So, just shake your head and say, holy jeez.
Right. You worry because you care. Again, talk like talked about. Well, I talked about that quite a bit about, right. You're trying to create an individual and teach them life skills and those types of things. So, like, what life skill will that girl ever have? The life skill she has when there's adversity, just quit. And, like, what's that going to translate into? Is that going to translate into a job? Is that going to translate to an issue in a marriage? Is that going to translate to issue trying to raise kids if you have kids? Like, the life skills part of this is so much more important, again, because you will get your outcomes based on what you create as a program and your culture that you create. You'll get your wins and losses. You'll get your successes. And successes and wins and losses aren't necessarily meaning you win a championship, right? There are all types of wins and losses and successes amongst the team. Like, we had, like, the last year I retired, we were picked to finish last, right? We were picked to finish last. We beat the team that was picked to finish first. Then we beat the team in overtime that did finish first, lost in the finals, and obviously you want to win, but other than the fact that we got a second place instead of first place trophy, we won everything that year.
Oh yeah. For sure.
Right. And, like, but getting kids to understand that, like, that's the unfortunate thing, right? That girl you're talking about will likely never get to that point because all she knows is how to quit when things get difficult, as opposed to how to push through when things get difficult. So that's sad.
Yeah, that's one of the huge things that sports teaches, eh? You lose, and how do you bounce back, or you're playing badly, how do you change that around, you know, so it doesn't spiral?
Right. Plus, you're gonna have to be, again, when you're right. There's that saying that what flows uphill, and you got to be ready for that as a head coach. And again, I think that's potentially some of these things with some of the younger coaches. They're not ready for that, and because they're not ready for that, they make excuses. Like, when I used to recruit the guys, I used to say to them, "Have you ever had a coach bring you in? Maybe you weren't playing as much as you wanted to, and they said, you know what? You just got to keep grinding. You got to work harder." And most of them, actually, everyone has always said yes, that they had a coach that told them that. So I told them, I said, if you come play for me and I ever tell you that, you have my permission to punch me in the face, because that is the biggest cop out there is. There's a reason. Like, there's a reason. There's always something you can do and something you can work on and have a purpose. And it may not get you in the lineup, but you will know why you're not playing, and you will know what you got to work on. And I just think that's something that, again, a lot of young guys that I say in the coaching world, they avoid that, again, because it's confrontation. And kind of speaking to your point, like, if that girl there ever becomes a coach, she's probably not going to be very good at explaining why you're playing, why you're not playing, because any kind of a confrontation becomes uncomfortable. So it's easier, because that's what she's done her whole life, right? Is avoid uncomfortable situations instead of actually dealing with them.
Yeah, yeah, and that's really important. Yeah, and also that you're tying the hands of the coaching staff if you're not allowed to, you know, if you have to say, oh, everything's great all the time, even if it isn't. I mean, how that's dishonest.
Yeah, it's funny. Like here, my wife's a big baseball fan, Boston Red Sox, who are doing terribly this year. And I said, your manager says the same thing every time he's interviewed. Yeah, we got to get better. We got to put things together. We got a good group. And I said to her, I guarantee you that there's stuff going on in that locker room. I told her that 2 months ago. And then they had these guys that do, like, the insider stuff, right? The
Yeah.
sports guys that are always around the team and that. And this guy got on, and for 10 minutes, all they talked about were the issues in the locker room. And I said, you could see it, but you got a manager who's not willing to say, we have to be better, and here's how we're going to be better. Right? It's one thing to say we got to be better, right? That's sort of the punch in the face mode, right? Like, that's easy. That's a cop out. How are we going to be better, right? And verbalize that, and be okay verbalizing that. Be okay being uncomfortable. I don't know how you put today's 30-some-year-old who's grown up their whole life not in that type of situation to begin to be the person who understands that it's okay to be uncomfortable, because that's how I'm going to get better, and I got to deal with that as a coach, just like you got to deal with that as a player. I
Yeah.
don't know. I think that's a challenge.